Okay, everyone, we'll go ahead and get started so we don't take up the room here later. My name is Mike Rosen. I'm a contact center product owner at Philips. And what I'm going to talk about today is the complexities that we have identified at a large global enterprise and some best practices that we've put in place that maybe you can borrow or steal and implement where you work. And it's hopefully something you'll grab, like maybe one or two things. I typically go to one or two of these trade shows a year or conferences a year, and I always gain like one or two things. And sometimes they're really great things, and sometimes they're just little ones. So hopefully you get a great one from what we've got here today. So I'll go ahead with that. So a little bit about myself. I've been in technology now for telephony technology for 15 years or so. After a non-lucrative career as a professional mountain biker, I decided to actually get a job and follow my father's footsteps and got into telephony. I've done everything in this industry from pre-sales engineering to sales to project management, operational support. I was a strategic designer as a consultant for many years, and I was talking to a buddy of mine for a long time about coming to work with him, who was a guy who had been successful at a bunch of different startups. And we know each other for many years, and he became, by accident almost, the CIO of Philips. And he said to me, hey, we've got some contact center stuff going on here, and I could really use some expertise to help try and figure this out. And I said, oh yeah, no problem. I know a contact center, I'll come on board. But I had no idea what I was walking into, and that's a little bit about what this is. So first, a little bit about Philips. We focus on improving people's lives through meaningful innovation. So you're probably familiar with some of our products that you might see on the consumer side, like Sonicare toothbrushes or Norelco razors or our brands that we sell. The majority of our business is actually in the healthcare space, and we sell medical devices like MRIs and CT scanners and X-rays. And then, of course, we have lighting solutions, so you probably maybe have some Philips light bulb somewhere in your house or maybe in your car. So it's a pretty decent-sized company, about 113,000 employees, been around for a long time, and with that comes a lot of complexity. We've grown through acquisition. We had periods of time where IT ran on their own at different businesses. We've had times where we said, oh no, we're going to try and have one IT department. We've had, on the telephony space, lots of complexity, and I'll get into what that is and what we've done to try and simplify that. So I came on board, and the first thing I had to do is figure out what it is that we actually own. What is a contact center within Philips? So we started to plot it out on a map. So looking at the different lines of business we had, everyone has a different need for contact center. There's different definitions of what a contact center was. But just on traditional platforms where we're actually supporting through some form of either really dumb ACD or maybe something more brilliant, we have about 97 sites globally. So complexity alone, just on the number of sites, gets ugly. So there's people that have more, but still 97's a lot, right? So what else makes it really complex? There's a lot of people who think they're the owner of stuff, right? So within each line of business, everyone's a stakeholder, so everyone has ideas for input. We have 28 different languages plus that we officially support. There's other languages that we also have to be able to talk about or talk to in the contact centers. And then there's a lot of different cultures. So we tried to identify, there's about 20 different types of cultures that we have to deal with in the organization. So if you times all those together, there's something like thousands of combinations of features and requirements that we might end up with, right? So I was actually here last year at Enterprise Connect, and there was this guy named Justin McGuire from Frog Design. I don't know if you were here last year and saw that. It was really nice. He did something exactly what I'm going to do here, and it made a lot of sense to me. Like, it was my aha moment. Okay, we have all this complexity. I'm designing to all this stakeholder input, and we're trying to figure out the right solution, the one solution that will work for everybody. And we couldn't. So I came up with this based on what Justin had put together. If you try and design, let's say, a garment based on input from all the different stakeholders, you'll have IT input, quality and regulatory if you're in that space, and maybe financial services as well. You have input from your business leaders and your salespeople and all this stuff, and you'll end up with what we call the ugly sweater design. It's just, you can't get away from designing to what everyone wants, and then you just end up with something terrible. So listening to him say, this guy from Frog Design said, we don't take input from it. We listen to their needs, and then we design something for them, right? And that's really what we had to do. On our team is a bunch of great people, and we needed to just design something that would work for all of them. So we went ahead with that. At the same time, our executive team had decided, at Philips, we have too many of everything. So not just contact center, but email. We had like Lotus Notes and Exchange. We had Exchange hosted. We had Exchange on-site. We had every version of every platform, or multiple versions of every IT platform. So they came up with this directive to collapse all of our platforms. So in contact center, we took this directive and said, all right, let's look at what we have. Each sector or each business line has their own contact centers or multiple forms of contact centers. And we were told to go ahead and collapse that down. And we're calling that the Philips Integrated Landscape. And all of our platforms are delivered into one. So we're collapsing everything into a single unit, a single platform, a single instance, and then just supporting all of the users on that, regardless of their business need. We've also been told to deliver those via the cloud and off the shelf. So we can't customize it. We just got to pick the right one that works off the shelf and then make sure that it's cloud enabled so that we don't have to do all the things like install servers and update patches and worry about that type of stuff, so that we can really just focus on delivering a good customer experience in our contact center. So we've moved forward with most of the vendors that you see here. The neat thing is that they're cloud-based vendors, and in theory, we can move those around if need be. If there's some reason to add another cloud, we could. So we're using Interactive Intelligence as our core platform for routing, British Telecom for the majority of our inbound, outbound, and toll-free SIP delivery for phone calls. We use Salesforce. We have an integration with Salesforce for both CRM sales and to the Service Cloud. And then we're using Amazon AWS for long-term storage of recordings, both screen and voice. One of the things we had to do is pick a vendor. So we actually have everything, stuff that we've all heard of and things that I've never even heard of before. But of course, we have the big four players in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. And we did an official review. We have a very formal process to determine, why is this vendor the right vendor for a solution. So we followed through that, and not choosing out the vendors here, but this is something that's a good idea. You should really have this laid out, and especially a place like Philips. Next year, I'll probably have a different CIO, and he'll have an idea in his head of what's right. And I'll have to go to him and say, no, we made a formal decision. Here's the one-slide version of why we made that decision. These are the decisioning points, and we always have to back that up. And it's always a challenge to be able to pull that out, right off the top of your head sometimes. So it's a good thing to have that around. And the next big thing that we're working on is this is a little techie here. I'll try and go through it a little bit quick so you don't get bored if you're not tech geek, but we are collapsing our wide area network and telephony into one. So if you think about a single physical site, our deployment mode in the past has been the traditional contact center deployment. So every single one of our sites has a wide area network connection. We call that our PGN. And then to connect it to our contact center solution, we would install another MPLS circuit. So that's 2 MPLS circuits. And then, of course, to get inbound and outbound and toll-free, we'd have to install some circuits from the local telecom. Okay, great. That's one site. It's easy to do. Times that by 97, things get ugly. So this is just 4 sites to make it easy to show on a slide. But if you start adding up all these circuits, it's a lot. It costs a lot. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. And there's also a lot of different contracts that we have in place. So once we actually figure out who it is that's causing a problem somewhere in phone call delivery, let's say, we have to figure out who owns that contract. Is that with the French telecom, Orange, or is that with somebody else? And we have to chase it down, and it's not easy to do. So this is when I first came on board, spending like 50% of our time dealing with the telecom providers, which we have 30 plus different contracts. So it was tough. So what we're doing is migrating to a much simpler network. And we already have this great wide area network connection between all of our different sites, our MPLS network. And we're just leveraging that to bring in our toll-free and outbound and inbound phone calls. And we're just also using that as our wide area network for the telephony infrastructure, or our core platform. I'll show a little bit more architectural slide in the future. But what this really means is I get rid of having to put stuff on site. I get rid of these long lead times where I have to order circuits from the telecom, order another wide area network connection. In the US, maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks. In China, 7 months, a year. Depending on where you are, you might run into different challenges. And for us, the project lead times are huge. So if a site said, once we've identified a site, say, hey, we want to roll them on the platform, we're looking at 12 months. That's a huge cost in just project costs alone. So we really collapsed that down into something much faster and simpler. So what does it mean for counts? In 2014, we had just 40 sites on this current platform that we have, and we had 62 telecom circuits, 45 media servers that are all on those different sites, and 49 gateways at all those different sites. So moving into 2016, we'll end up having, almost more than doubling the number of sites that we support, reducing our total telecom circuits to 20, and that's with just 2 carriers. And our number of media servers drops immensely too, and I'll show you how that works in the architecture as we get to that slide. And then we got rid of the majority of our gateways, and we're now just down to 6 session border controllers. There's a few countries where SIP just doesn't work, either regulatory reasons or just distance-wise for latency that doesn't work. But we've been able to do that for almost all the sites. So a little bit about the architecture. This is our older architecture, and what really ended up happening is in these large sites, this upper box here, we had a real reliance on 3 circuits working perfectly in concert to deliver a phone call. So I would need to make sure, of course, that my local telecom was delivering calls properly, and that those circuits were up to good into our AudioCodes gateway, into our media servers, and all that stuff had to work perfectly. We also have a large majority of our sites that are what we call a remote architecture. So in essence, let's say like Canada is a remote site for us, and they relied on our Alpharetta, Georgia site, which is big. So if something happened in Alpharetta and one of these 3 circuits, this wide area network connection, our own internal wide area network connection, or the local telecom provider connection had a problem, then so would a Canada. And it would, an interruption would be bad for a lot of people and not just this one single site or something. So it was a complex architecture, didn't work all the time. In the US, it was easy to deploy. In other countries, it was a nightmare. It just took us a very long time to get things deployed. So what we've done is really try to simplify or cloudify our own network. And really simply, we basically took all of our telephony and hardware and moved them from on-site stuff to cloud, but it's really not cloud, it's really points of presence. So over here on the left, we have these things called regional data centers. We have 6 of them around the globe, and within each regional data center, we have a session border controller from AudioCodes, and then our media servers, which do the things like play, hello, and thank you for calling Philips. Please press 1 if you want to talk about your Sonicare toothbrush. So that happens there. We also start to capture recordings in that space as well. So those are in points of presence. They're in the telecom POP. So they're super redundant. They're right physically next to our carrier. So when we get an inbound phone call from the outside world, it lands at the carrier exchange point and it hands off right into our equipment right there and then. So we have 0 latency problems with that. We've already tested it. It's phenomenal. All that media is there. So that sometimes takes up some bandwidth and slows things down. But we put in very high CPU or strong CPU media servers, so we can get away with just a few of them to support our entire architecture. We also don't have to worry about, at each site, I had all these, if you think back, I had all those sites that each had telco circuits. Well, for every site, I have to also add capacity into there, right? So if I had 10 PRIs, I would add another 3 for capacity just in case I needed it. They're just sitting there idle and I'm still paying for them. Today I'm using SIP and I do have that capacity built into our line, but it's built into the entire network. So I'm not just doing it for a single site. For all of Philips, I'm building in that capacity. And of course, because it's SIP, we're SIP trunking, it's burstable. So I have a known, I do Erlang calculations, we know how many phone calls we're going to get, but we also can burst on demand that will increase up, and we can handle all of our call volume that we could basically ever get. So yeah, having this reliance on these regional data centers and all of our telecom landing in those regional data centers, we don't have to worry about installing stuff on site. So today, when a customer or a user of our platform or wants to be someone that might want to be a user of our platform calls us up and says, hey, we have a contact center need in this office and somewhere in Philips around the globe. Our first question to them as a team is, hey, are you connected to the PGN? Which most of them are. And if they're connected to our Philips Global Network, we can turn them up in about 6 weeks. All we need to do is ship some phones out if their local area network supports voice over IP. Then we do some training, some configuration on call flows. We're done. They have a call center. So it's very easy to deploy. Remote sites, which we use this term very, very lightly, or very broadly, I should say, remote architecture. For us includes work from home agents, which we have about 40% of our population of agents work from home. And then we have other sites that are just too small to they're not connected to the Philips Global Network because maybe they're not actually Philips. We use some outsourced providers to answer our phone calls in the consumer space. So we just ship them the phone calls. So in the past, we used to outsource to like the Sitels of the world and then use their technology. And now we actually can do we own the technology and we route the calls to the providers of our choice. which is good for us in a lot of different reasons. Sometimes performance, this vendor is performing better than that vendor, so we'll send them more calls versus that vendor. Sometimes price is a driver, and we push calls around. So this makes it very simple. We can turn up a new provider as long as they have a web-based login into their tool, so they can log in. They type in the 10-digit phone number at the desk that they're at, and they're up and running and taking customer calls, so it's very simple to do. We've also this year went out to geo-redundant architecture in our cloud side from Interactive. We split our cores, if you would, and are building that, which is hopefully going to give us a little bit more stability as well. Any questions about the architecture before we get on? I'd love to talk about this all day, but it's my space. But yeah, so some more things that we did to help. If you're in an organization that's even not gigantic, but even decent size, you probably split between IT department and business, and all the requirements and getting things done is a challenge, and we have all those. So these are some ideas that we've done, and it works really well for us. So I have to constantly internally sell what contact center is. And if you think about it, if you're an executive, you know exactly what contact center is because you've called your bank or you've called your airline to talk to them. So you know what contact center is. You make a phone call, and then someone on the other end answers, and that's it. So why is this thing, as an executive, why am I spending so much money on this simple thing that answers phone calls? So I use this slide, and you can steal it if you want. It explains that contact center is a heck of a lot more than an application. It's actually a platform, right? And if you think about all the different peripherals that you support, it might be 12, 15. In our case, it's like 18 if you count the telecom, which is just as important as the applications. They have to deliver phone calls, right? So all those piece parts coming together is what makes contact center. So if you're having trouble, hey, it's telling to your boss why you have a need for 6 or 7 staff when the guys who support email are just one guy, well, here's why. You have a lot of different knowledge and expertise needs. So there's a lot of differences in what you're doing there. And the other thing I push on too real hard is, yeah, there's the technology side of contact center, but the business process side is what really can make you successful in contact center, right? So if you're spending all your time working on the technology piece, or you just have enough people to get by with the technology piece, you're never helping your business improve customer experience. You're not helping them dial in on those reports and figure out why there's anomalies on the day, a particular time of day, or you're not helping them, really use quality management or workforce management to improve the way that they're answering, or the times that they're able to answer their customer calls and those types of things. So just a little pitch on helping sell. The other thing we did is really collapse the towers. So like any organization, we have really defended towers. We have people who have been in our organization for so long, they built literally a wall around themselves, and don't touch me. If it's not my thing, I don't want to hear about it. And if there's something going on in your tower, good luck, because I'm not helping. I'm protected. And it's hard to get anything done in an environment like that. So we made this conscious effort in this contact center group to really just work with people who didn't have that mindset. And we started realizing, we did it by accident. We just stopped dealing with people we didn't like, and people that we did like, we started working together. And then we realized, hey, we have something here. So we just came up with this name, the MDT, the multidisciplinary team. And it was kind of a joke. We were kind of like joking around about it. And then our executive heard about the success that we had. We did this big deployment, and they were really impressed on how we did it. So we told them, oh, we have this thing called the multidisciplinary team. Oh, what is that? Oh, we meet every week and we talk about it, which is not true. We just meet when we have to do work. And it became a success. So now all these people look at us, so the executives, they printed it in our internal newsletter, or this is how you're supposed to work between the business line and the IT line and different towers. So now we have the leverage of using that whenever we get someone who doesn't play nice, i.e., we're trying to change a port on the firewall, and the guy says, oh, we can't do that. Sorry, the answer is no. We say, oh, you don't want to be part of the MDT? Because we could have that written up in the newsletter that Joe didn't want to be a part of the successful MDT team. So it's been helpful for us, and it really got us a lot of notice in the space. The other thing we've been trying to work on, and this is beyond contact center, this is more into customer experience. And I actually stole this from when I did some work for New York City 311, which is like a everything non-emergency phone call line. So you could call to report that your street light was out, or that potholes in the street, or what's happening in Central Park next Wednesday night. You can ask anything. And they had done a great job under Mayor Bloomberg of realizing that there's so many different piece parts that make up a city, so many different foundations and government bodies, and everyone had different platforms and different ways of communicating to the public what they were doing. So what we knew was happening, and the mayor knew this was happening, that there's a very confused messaging to the public. And we've basically recreated the same thing here at Philips now, and we work with our marketing teams. We went out beyond just the contact center group. So we went with marketing into sales and all these different groups and said, hey, we're gonna start this thing. It used to be called the content team. Now it's called the omni-channel team. And what we do is work together. And it's really simple. We meet only once a quarter, and we just lay out plans. So we talk to marketing. Hey, what are you guys working on? Oh, we're renaming the categories of our platforms that we sell medical devices. Well, that's important because our IVR is broken out by modality or by those different names. So we'll have to change the nomenclature in the IVR. That type of stuff is what comes out of these meetings, you know. And then we'll design things maybe for an outbound campaign for different sales things within consumer space. So it's really been successful for us in driving that customer experience, and then we get to, on the technology side, make sure that we can support it, right? And we didn't get hit with oh, can you guys handle 1 million inbound phone calls tomorrow? Because we just said we're going to give away, you know, on the news, we said we're going to give away 1 million free toothbrushes. Like, oh, well, no, we can't support 1 million. Let's work that out and figure out how you can approach that better so we can support it on the technology side. So that's really it. There's open for questions. Anyone have any questions about different ideas or challenges that you have in your organization? Maybe we could share thoughts on what we can help each other with. If not, you can reach out to me via email at any time. I love talking to other people and trying to figure out what they're doing in their network or their company and what challenges they're overcoming, because it's helped me a ton, and I love sharing. Well, thanks.